Welcome back to Developmental Psychology. We're in week 4, and this lecture is for chapter 7, Physical and Cognitive Development in Early Childhood. Chapter 7, Learning Objectives, identify physical changes in early childhood, describe 3 views of the cognitive changes that occur during that time, summarize how language develops in early childhood, and evaluate different approaches to early childhood education. Body growth and change. In early childhood, children slim down and shoot up. At 3, they begin losing babyish roundness. The trunk, arms, and legs grow longer, and body proportions become more adult-like. This table gives you a physical growth averages between age 3 to 6 in the form of height and weight. And there are different norms based on sex. So there's a column for boys and a column for girls for each one. Most U.S. children average about 11 hours of sleep at night by age 5. Sleep problems have been universally associated with unhealthy diet, poor emotional or cognitive status, and preference for evening wakefulness. Sleep disturbances. A night terror involves waking up suddenly from a deep sleep in a state of agitation. Nightmares are also common. Sleepwalking and sleep talking occur during slow wave sleep and are more common when children are sleep deprived. Enuresis, which is repeated involuntary urination in clothing or in bed, is not unusual by ages 3 to 5. Brain development. At about 5 years of age, the brain is approximately 90% of adult size. Rapid growth in early childhood occurs in the frontal areas that regulate planning. By age 6, the brain has attained 90% of its peak volume. From ages 6 to 11, rapid growth occurs in associative thinking, language, and spatial relations as the corpus callosum, that large section in the middle that connects both hemispheres, develops and further connects both hemispheres of the brain. Preschool children make great advances in gross motor skills involving the large muscles. They can run, jump, and climb farther and faster. Physical development flourishes in active, unstructured free play. Children from non-Western countries are exposed to different motor activities and would likely indicate different development. Fine motor skills, such as buttoning a shirt or drawing a picture, involve eye, hand, and small motor coordination. Lack of practice can lead to slower motor development. As they develop motor skills, preschoolers continually merge skills into more complex systems of action. Obesity. Currently, 12.7% of 2 to 5-year-olds had a body mass index at or above the 95th percentile for their age. As head of the household's level of education rises, obesity rates decline. Obesity can be hereditary, but the main factors are environmental and hinge on caloric intake, changes in diet composition, declining levels of physical activity, and changes in gut microbiome. Among the potential long-term effects of the COVID-19 pandemic are increased overweight and obesity in children, and a reduction in access to nutritional foods for lower-income families. Early interventions are important in preventing obesity. undernutrition. In countries such as the United States, overweight and obesity are common patterns. Hidden hunger can arise through a consistent, high-calorie, highly processed, nutrient-poor diet. This is often found in lower-income families doing their best to stretch their dollars. Food insecurity occurs when families do not have dependable access to adequate amounts of food. Food insecurity is associated with poverty and living in larger cities or rural areas. It's associated with race and ethnicity, with the highest rates occurring in Black and Hispanic households. Malnutrition can take many forms and can create children who have a stunted appearance or look very thin. Deprivation and undernourishment can negatively affect growth, physical development, and cognitive and psychosocial development. A food allergy is an abnormal immune system response to a specific food and is more common in children than in adults. About 8% of children are affected by some type of food allergy. Skin and food allergies have increased in the past 10 years. Not enough evidence exists to pinpoint a cause just yet. Deaths and accidental injuries. In 2020, about 5 million children under 5 died worldwide. Most deaths are due to infectious diseases or neonatal complications. In the United States, accidents are the leading cause of death from the ages of 1 to 12 years. Most deaths occur in the home, often from fires, drowning in bathtubs, poisoning, or falls. U.S. laws and regulations, such as car seats and safe storage of medicine, have increased child safety. Lower socioeconomic status, or SES, is associated with a greater risk of injury, illness, and death. Poor children are more likely to have chronic conditions and activity limitations, to lack health insurance, and to have unmet medical and dental needs. A key factor is health insurance. Medicaid is available, but many children remain uninsured. Window on the world, surviving the first 5 years of life. The chances of a child living to their 5th birthday have nearly tripled in the past 50 years. Worldwide, 75% of deaths in children under age 5 is attributed to 7 issues: pneumonia, preterm birth complications, intrapartum complications, diarrhea, congenital abnormalities, neonatal sepsis, and malaria. A global effort is reducing child mortality rates through improved family care, nutritional supplements, and vaccinations and antibiotics. Environmental pollutants. Children exposed to prenatal smoke are at an increased risk of respiratory infections, ear problems, or worsened asthma. Air pollution is associated with increased risks of death, chronic respiratory disease, and childhood cancers. Pesticide exposure may negatively affect the developing brain, and lead exposure can interfere with cognitive development. The symbolic function. Deferred imitation involves the imitation of an action at some point after having observed it. It's an example of the symbolic function. Another example is pretend play, in which children use an object to represent something else, such as holding up a remote control to your ear and pretending to talk on the phone. Object space. Children slowly come to understand the symbols that describe physical spaces. At age 3, most children reliably grasp relationships between pictures, maps, or scale models and the objects or spaces they represent. Older preschoolers can view a scale model of a room where a toy is hidden and then find the toy in the actual room. Causality. Piaget believed preoperational children cannot yet reason logically about cause and effect. He said they reason by transduction, which is mentally linking two events, whether they are related or not. An example could be a child believing their bad behavior caused their parents' divorce. Research indicates that when situations are appropriate, children can grasp cause and effect. This chart here shows cognitive advances during early childhood. In one column is a description of the advancement, and on the other column is a description of the significance. Some examples are advancement in symbols, so does not need sensory motor contact with something to think about. So movement to more abstract thinking. Classifications, the child begins organizing objects, people, and events. Empathy, the child is starting to able to imagine how others feel. And theory of mind, more aware of others' mental activity, the idea that other people have thoughts. In Piaget's preoperational stage, the second major stage of cognitive development, symbolic thought expands, but children cannot yet use logic. Being able to think about something in the absence of sensory or motor cues characterizes the symbolic function. Without symbols, people could not communicate verbally, make change, read maps, or treasure photos of distant loved ones. Preschool children better understand identities, which are the concept that people and many things are fundamentally the same, even if they change in outward appearance. This understanding underlies the emergence of the self-concept. Categorizing allows children to identify similarities and differences. By age 4, many children can classify by 2 criteria, such as shape and color. Animism is the tendency to attribute life to objects that are not alive, is a categorization error. Numbers. Around 9 to 11 months of age, children understand ordinality, the comparing of quantities. At around 2.5 years of age, children grasp the cardinality principle, which is the number of items in a set is the same, regardless of how they are arranged. By the time they enter elementary school, most children have developed basic number sense, such as counting, number transformations like addition and subtraction, and estimation. Immature aspects of preoperational thought. A main characteristic of preoperational thought is centration, focusing on one aspect of a situation and neglecting others. An example is egocentrism, the inability to consider another person's point of view. Piaget believed preschoolers could not decenter and think about several aspects of a situation at one time. More recent research shows that preschoolers can shift perspectives if questions are posed in familiar, less abstract ways. So more the format of how the information is asked of them could be the difference in whether or not they're able to demonstrate the ability to decenter. Tests of various kinds of conservation. Piaget demonstrated that children kind of struggle with this ability to understand that how much space something takes up does not necessarily equate to its volume. So this chart shows different types of conservation tasks, what the child is shown, what is then done with those pieces, the question, and then the usual answer when the child is within the preoperational stage. There's a video posted also within the announcement that shows this like in action, which is really neat. Another example of centration is the failure to understand conservation, that two things that are equal remain so if their appearance is altered, as long as nothing is added or taken away. For example, a preoperational child will perceive a glass of water poured into a taller, narrower glass as containing more water because the glass is taller. A preoperational child is influenced by irreversibility, a failure to understand that an operation can go in two or more directions. Theory of mind is the awareness of the broad range of human mental states, such as beliefs and desires, and the understanding that others have their own distinct mental states. At 2 years, children engage in pretend play. By age 3, children use deception in simple games and are able to predict others' actions. Between ages 3 to 5, they understand that a person can believe something that they themselves know is not true. Distinguishing between fantasy and reality. Piaget believed that children around 5 or 6 begin to understand the distinction between what seems to be and what is. More recent research demonstrates that under certain conditions, children as young as 3 and 4 can distinguish fantasy from reality. Memory development from the information processing approach. Encoding is the process by which information is prepared for long-term storage and later retrieval. Storage is the retention of information in memory for future use. Retrieval involves accessing and recalling information from storage. There are 3 types of storage. The first is sensory, which is initial, brief, temporary storage. The second is working, which is short-term storage of information being actively processed. This working memory permits the development of executive functioning and in hand allows processing, which is controlled by a central executive. Lastly, long-term storage is storage of virtually unlimited capacity for long periods of time. Recognition is the ability to identify a previously encountered stimulus. Recall is the ability to reproduce information from memory. Preschool children do better on recognition tasks relative to recall tasks. Generic memory is memory that produces scripts of familiar routines to guide behavior, such as riding the bus to preschool. Episodic memory is long-term memory of a specific event linked to time and place, such as getting vaccinated at the pediatrician's office, which could then lead to the child having like a memory of being scared, and then that would be the emotion that they would connect to that experience. Autobiographical memory is a type of episodic memory pertaining to specific events in one's life, which emerge with the development of language and the concept of self. Unique events and active participation in an event versus passive watching are more likely to be remembered. The social interaction model proposes children construct autobiographical memories through conversation with adults about shared events. Intelligence, psychometric and Vygotskian approaches. 2 commonly used measures of intelligence in young children are the Stanford-Binet Intelligence Scale, which is used for children ages 2 and over to measure fluid reasoning, knowledge, quantitative reasoning, visual spatial reasoning, and working memory. The second is the Wechsler Preschool and Primary Scale of Intelligence, revised 4th edition, which measures verbal, performance, and combined scores. According to Vygotsky, children learn through interaction with others. The zone of proximal development is the difference between what a child can do alone and what a child can do with help. Scaffolding involves temporary support to help a child master a task. Language development. Between ages 3 and 6, children make rapid advances in language skills. By age 3, the average child knows about 1,000 words. By age 6, a child can speak 2,600 words and understands more than 20,000 words. Fast mapping is a process by which a child absorbs the meaning of a new word after hearing it once or twice in a conversation. Grammar and syntax. At age 3, children begin using plurals, possessive, past tense, and begin to know the difference between I, you, and we. By ages 4 and 5, sentences average 4 to 5 words and may be declarative, negative, interrogative, or imperative. By ages 5 to 7, they use more conjunctions, prepositions, and articles. Young children sometimes make errors such as saying holded instead of held, or eated instead of ate. Pragmatics refers to the practical knowledge needed to use language for communication with others. Social speech is speech intended to be understood by a listener, such as knowing how to ask for things and how to tell a story or joke. Private speech is talking aloud to the self with no intent to communicate with others. Piaget saw it as a sign of cognitive immaturity, while Vygotsky viewed private speech as a conversation with the self. Emergent literacy refers to the development of fundamental reading skills, including oral language skills such as vocabulary, syntax, and narrative structure, and phonological skills that link letters with sounds. Social interaction is important to literacy development, and reading to children is one of the most effective paths to literacy. Early childhood education. Preschools vary in their goals and curriculum. The Montessori method stresses the importance of children learning independently at their own pace on self-chosen tasks. Research indicates it is effective and prepares children for elementary school in reading and math. Compensatory preschools, such as Project Head Start in the United States, are designed to aid children who would otherwise enter school poorly prepared to learn. Head Start provides medical, dental, and mental health care, as well as at least one hot meal a day. Research shows Head Start children make academic and social gains in vocabulary, letter recognition, early writing and math, and social skills. A successful transition from home or preschool to kindergarten lays the foundation for future academic achievement. Emotional and social adjustment affect readiness and strongly predict school success. Research and action, resilience, and intersectional identities in education. In a hierarchical society, deficit perspectives based on assumptions, stereotypes, and biases inform how people view those outside the majority and their cultures. However, cultures can also be viewed in terms of their strengths. When educators value and incorporate diverse experiences and cultures into the school environment, they can better support and foster a resilient identity in all students.